In a world that claims to be modern, do shadows of ignorance still linger? History repeats itself, but this time it wears a modern facade where science shines, yet ignorance is deeply rooted. Let's take a deep dive into the darkest roots of human actions. This clip offers a bitter yet real portrayal of modern society that will definitely make you think. There's a verse in the Quran that says, "And do not display yourselves like the display of the former times of ignorance." It's basically telling us not to go out all decked out, like in the old days of ignorance. So it's saying don't flaunt yourself like back then. Tabarruj means to stand out, like a tower in the street. The best way to think of Tabarruj is like being a billboard. What does that mean? The Prophet, speaking on behalf of God, is saying, do not display yourselves. And while he was addressing women specifically, I think this message applies way beyond just that. In Arabic, the word for tower translates to sign in Persian, something that was used to refer to tall buildings. It also describes the bright stars in the sky, meaning things that catch the eye. God advises his followers not to display themselves too openly in public, like in the days of ignorance. Why mention the days of ignorance? Would it have been a problem if he hadn't? Not really. So why specify the first ignorance? It's to indicate that there's a second kind of ignorance coming. He mentioned the first so you can recognize the second. There will come a time when we see a return to the old ignorance, a new form of it. The situation of the Arabs during the time of ignorance was terrible. When you read history, you start to grasp the miracle of the Prophet. As Will Durant said, what do you expect from the Prophet of Islam? Do you want him to turn a stick into a dragon? Do you know who he was debating with? What kind of people they were? Moral corruption was rampant in society. They had 7 or 8 different kinds of sexual deviations. This was 1,400 years ago. For instance, they would swap their wives with each other. The practice of nikah al-badal, which is making a comeback in the world now. They were already familiar with this concept 1,400 years ago. Nikah al-jam marriage in the past was pretty wild. People would have multiple partners, and if a child was conceived, it didn't matter much if it was a girl. But if it was a boy, the woman would decide who the father was. That was just how things were. For instance, a woman might see a male poet, and, wanting her child to be a poet too, would cheat on her husband with him, all while living at home with her spouse. They had some understanding of genetics back then, but she was still married. Things got so out of hand that in pre-Islamic Arabia, men would leave their wives as inheritance to their sons, except for the mother of the boy. This meant that aside from the woman who gave birth, other women could be passed down to the son. Right after a father died, the sons would race to throw their cloak over any woman they wanted, claiming her for themselves. It was a pretty messed up situation. I'm sorry, but even they knew that this kind of behavior was wrong. They wouldn't do that with their own mothers or close relatives. But now, it feels like we're back in that time. What was once seen as ignorance back then doesn't seem to be the case anymore, does it? What was once a sign of foolishness seems to have returned. Today, abortion is happening all over the world. People are still being cut off from existence. Back in the day, babies were born and then killed. Now they're being terminated before they even get a chance to be born. This is all taking place in high-end settings and hospitals. A senator from Oklahoma stood up in Congress and shouted that ethics have gone down the drain. He claimed that 4-month-old fetuses are being aborted and sold. This senator mentioned that back then, these babies were bought and sold for $400 to $500 each. He said their skin is so delicate and well-formed. They're using it in expensive skincare creams and cosmetics, which are even exported to Italy and Spain, processed, and then used in the US. Setting aside the moral issues, it's a complete dehumanization to cut off a human being who has blood running through their veins before they even get a chance to live. Later, this senator protested against 3 companies, Pepsi, Nestle, and Kraft. I have a problem with the fact that you buy and use the livers of these fetuses as flavoring in your companies. It's not like we're in the days of the ignorant Arabs who used to eat people. What a situation that was. There will come a time when people drink disgusting beverages, Right now, a lot of these juices unfortunately contain some alcohol. Then they slap a label on it saying it's been de-alcoholized and all that, which raises a lot of doubts. I know many ethics professors who don't drink. They say they're being cautious from a religious standpoint. I don't have the equipment to test how much alcohol is in it. I know people who avoid it. Isn't soda one of those nasty drinks? In our office, whenever someone comes in, they're surprised to see sodas lined up in the bathroom. For instance, when I go to give a speech, I notice they've placed soda next to a food for me. There's a person in our office who cleans that area, and they say this soda is really good, don't throw it away. It's great for cleaning the bathroom. You can clean your car ceiling with soda, and it works wonders. It's great for your tires too. What are we doing? Drinking bad beverages. There's a saying that one of the signs of the end times is that the air will become dark. One sign of the end times is that there will be a lot of dust in the sky. Dust and ignorance. Dust and ignorance have taken hold of the people. What's inside them is spilling out. God darkens the air for you. This dust can also mean that recognizing the truth becomes difficult. On a surface level, it also means that water is running low. Imam Sadiq said that it's not that rain decreases, but rather that water becomes scarce. When asked how, he replied that clouds rain at the wrong times and places. The narration states that security is being compromised from both land and air. Remember how they took down the Malaysian plane? And our own plane, Iran, was shot down too. As for land routes, it's a whole mess out there in the world. The narration mentions that security is being stripped away. People aren't content. Their eyes are always wandering. We have something called need. It's a psychological topic worth exploring. People go to fulfill their needs based on how much they feel they have. An increase in need means there should be a corresponding supply. Now imagine if a false need arises one that has no supply. What happens in the end times is that your needs keep increasing, all because of money. And you're left scrambling to make up for it.